My name is Margaret Adelia Haycock Koyle. I was born on April 13th, 1926 in Burley, Idaho. I was born at home. My sister Beth says that when she came home, there I was, sitting in the rocking chair, wrapped up in a blanket, and they thought I was very sweet. I was the sixth child of 10 children. My father was George Harry Haycock. My mother was Lottie Teresa Grover. When I was born, I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. I was named after my great-grandmother. I think her name was Adelia Crosby, and that's on my father's side. I can't remember a lot of my childhood experiences. There was not really a lot to do. We didn't ever go to a movie except on Christmas Day, and there was a free movie put on by the Elks. When we would come out of the movie, there was always a big bag of candy. The movie on Christmas Day was about the only movie we ever went to. As neighbors and cousins, in the evenings, we would get together and play games. Some of the games we would play were Kick the Can and Run Sheepy Run. We used to yell and squeal and howl and really have a good time playing that. We did not have a lot of toys. We did not have a lot of things to do. It was things like climbing trees, jumping off straw stacks, climbing the haystack, and things like that we did with our time. As soon as we were big enough, we were put on the work team. My memories of Christmas were not very many. We never had much money. Christmas was very skimpy. Birthdays were just another day usually. We did not celebrate a lot. I don't remember having a birthday party or anything like that. So we learned pretty early not to ask for anything, and we didn't. We got a new pair of shoes and some long, ugly brown stockings, and maybe one new dress when we started school, and that was usually made by my mother. She used to sew my underwear even. When we would buy flour, it came in a pretty printed bag. My mom would wash those bags and use them to cut out our underpants. She used to sew us a vest that was used to hold up our socks. She used to sew us nearly all our clothes, and that's just what we had to wear. I don't remember my mother real early in my life. I guess what I do remember is that she was a hard worker. She didn't have any modern conveniences. No one had heard of a television yet. She did her laundry in a wringer washer 1 day a week, and she washed everything in the house that was dirty. The socks were all put in and matched up in pairs and hung out on the line. We never had a box of socks that didn't match or anything like that. We didn't have enough pairs to lose any. We didn't have a sink, so we washed dishes in a dishpan and in a rinse pan. I do remember that my mom always planted a garden. She was a good gardener. She always planted flowers along her garden and took care of them. She mowed the lawn, which wasn't very big. We mowed it with a hand mower that we had to push. I don't know what her favorite flowers were, but she used to plant a lot of zinnias because they were big and colorful and easy to grow. She's planted sweet peas. I think those are my favorite. She also planted gladiolas and dahlias. She always had 3 or 4 cows. We milked them by hand, sitting on a stool, holding a bucket between our legs. We would run the milk through a cream separator, and it would separate the milk and cream. We would save the cream and take it to the store and sell it. The milk would be used to feed pigs or baby calves or whatever we had. That would help with the groceries when we would get the cream check about once a week, every week. We also had chickens and would sell some of the eggs. We'd take the eggs to town and sell them at the store and get money, not near what eggs cost now, maybe 10, 15 cents a dozen. Then we would buy groceries with that. When my mom was growing up, they had an old organ that you pumped with your feet to make it play. My mom spent a lot of time trying to teach herself to play that organ, and she really did get so she could play well. I remember when we were able to get a piano, probably after my mom and dad were divorced. She used to spend a lot of time at that piano. She was quite musical, and she used to like to lead the singing. She led the singing in the Unity Ward for about 40 years and was very good. They put on good and wonderful programs. She was always involved and loved that kind of stuff. I need to mention the canning my mom used to do. When we were all kids at home, money was scarce. Our dad was gone a lot, and we didn't have much of anything to eat. I can remember getting on the horse and riding to the little store not too far from our home, about 3/4 of a mile, and buying a loaf of bread for a nickel. She did hundreds and hundreds of cans of fruits, vegetables, and things from the garden. She was a very innovative lady. She used to can green beans and was always looking for new things to can. She would also can meat. She canned everything she could get her hands on so we would have food enough to get through the winter. She used to dry corn by putting in a cheesecloth bag, hung it out on the clothesline, and let it dry. Then in the wintertime, she would put it in water and cook it, and it would taste like fresh corn. She took good care of her family. She was diligent about seeing that we had good, nourishing food to eat. As I got older, I remember appreciating the dinner she would cook. We had a big family, but on Christmas, our special days, she would fix turkey or sometimes chicken. She used to make dressing that I have never been able to forget. She was really well known as a good cook. When I was growing up, we lived in the Unity ward outside of Burley. Alfred was one of the priests in the ward, and I think they wanted him to have the experience of baptizing someone, so he baptized me. I graduated primary when I was 12. Lots of days we'd walk home from primary, and in the summertime we usually walked to and from primary. We always got to go to Mutual. We used to have quite a bit of fun. We danced in competitions, and in the summer they would go to dance festivals and learn dances. We also did road shows, and I went camping in the summer with the girls when they went to girls' camp. We didn't do a lot of things like we do now. We had to make our fun. We didn't go to the movies or have a lot of other things to do. When we went camping, we usually go to Bostetter, which was not very far from Burley, maybe 40 to 50 miles. I started school when I was 6. I attended the Miller Elementary School in Burley. I attended the Burley High School in Burley, Idaho. At the end of the 9th grade, we had a graduation. I don't remember if I had a new dress or not, but it was exciting to think about being able to go to high school. I got along well with my teachers and graduated in 1944. I took typing and shorthand. I never got very good in typing, but it was good in shorthand. I didn't get straight A's, but I got pretty good grades.
My name is John Hiram Koyle. I was born May 2nd, 1926, at our family home in Willow Creek, near the foothills south and a little east of Burley, Idaho. To distinguish me from my grandpa, John Hiram Koyle, whom I was named after, I've always been known since becoming an adult as John H. Koyle. When I was young, I was often called Johnny. Some people continue to call me Johnny as an adult. I was the third child born to my pa, Ross Fielding Koyle, and Emma Faye Jolly. Being named after my grandpa, I was always proud of that name. When I was young, our family made their living by farming and milking a large herd of cows. In those days, cows were only milked by hand. When I was 5 years old, I started helping my pa and brothers with the milking. If you're a good enough milker, you can create a thick layer of foam on top of the milk, sometimes 1 inch thick, using both hands to milk hard into the bucket. In order to feed all those cows, we raised a lot of hay. That was a big job. It had to be cut, raked, and put into piles, then loaded on a wagon with a pitchfork. The loaded wagons were then taken to the stack yard, and we used a derrick to stack the hay. My father was one of the first to buy a hay baler in the area. It was a very exciting time for us. It saved us a lot of work. We called my father Pa and sometimes Papa. He was a very progressive farmer for his day. I started school in a 2-room brick building just a quarter mile east of our home. The teacher taught grades 1 through 8. One day there was a big earthquake while we were at school. The earthquake was so bad that it made a big crack in the school building. On lunch break and at noon time recess, we spent our time running in the sagebrush around the school and running through the creek just west of the school. A lot of times I would sit in the school in the afternoon with wet clothing and wet feet because we played in the water during lunchtime. The schoolhouse was only a short distance away from where we lived. We would walk to school, but some of the children rode horses. The horses were tied to a post so the kids could ride them home after school. Starting the 7th grade was a scary time. We went to school in Burley instead of the small schoolhouse near our home. We had to ride on the school bus for the first time in my life. That school was really big too. It was the junior high school and the high school together. Eventually I made good friends there and enjoyed school. I graduated from Burley High School in May 1944. From a young age, me and my brothers helped our pa every day. One time I was helping Pa and my Uncle Sidas scrape and gravel a road. They had a team of 4 horses that pulled the scraper with a load of gravel over the top of a structure they had built. The gravel would fall through a hole into the wagon. Uncle Silas was standing to the side of the wagon when the wall of the gravel pit suddenly caved in and crushed him against the wheel. I can still remember the last time I saw Uncle Silas alive. I remember the color shirt he was wearing and the color of his pants. That was a real sad day for our family. When I was 17, my mother gave birth to the 10th child in our family. She came down with a sickness about a month after the baby was born. They took her to the hospital. It seemed like she was doing fine. She was laughing and talking with people, but then she started to cough and turn a dark color. The nurse went to get some oxygen and found the oxygen tank was empty. My mother passed away when my youngest brother was only a month old. They say she died of a heart attack. Margaret and I have known each other since I went to Burley to school when we were 13 or 14 years old. During our senior year at Burley High School, I wrote a note to Margaret and snuck it under the table, asking her to go to the senior prom with me. That was our first date. We dated through the summer and were married on August 2nd, 1944 in the Logan Temple. We were 18 years old. We went to Spanish Fork, Utah, where my family had come from for our honeymoon, but only stayed one night and came home because I needed to get back to work. Esther was my older sister. She was a twin to Lester. After my mother died, Esther took on herself much of the responsibility of caring for my brothers and sisters, including the new little baby. After Margaret and I were married, I worked for Pa, and Margaret and I moved into that home, me helping Pa on the farm and Margaret helping Esther with the housework and family responsibilities. After a couple of months, Margaret and I rented our own house in Burley. It was a small 2-room house with an outside toilet. I worked a few jobs around town during that time. I was a mechanic. I pumped gas at a service station, washing car windows when we filled up the cars, and changing truck tires. Eventually we bought our own home and farm in the View area. The soil was poor on that little farm in View. There was gravel near the surface. Some people said we could never grow sugar beets there, but we milked cows and put manure on that soil, and eventually I was even featured as one of the top sugar beet growers in Cassia County. From that little 80-acre farm, we acquired a neighboring 40 acres. As time went on, we rented and bought neighboring farms. When we sold the farm in View, we were renting or owned 350 acres. We were actually one of the larger farms in the area. In about 1963, after selling the View farm, we moved to Willow Creek, about a 10-mile drive farther south. Willow Creek had about 250 of irrigated acres when we went there, and we continued to acquire a neighboring 400 acres. We also took some ground out of sagebrush and put sprinklers on it. When we left Willow Creek, there was nearly 1,000 acres of irrigated ground. A 640-acre ranch in Elba that included a forest permit for cattle, another forest permit for cattle on the Willow Creek side of the mountain, and about 1,200 acres of dry farm, plus quite a bit of sagebrush ground. I told my boys if they wanted to stay in farming, that we would put sprinklers on that good ground and grow with it. None of the boys showed interest in staying and farming, so we decided to sell. When we moved to Gooding in 1973, we bought 5 farms and put them together. We made a real nice farm in Gooding. We were one of the first people to put pivots on, to plow up those ditches and rock piles so as to make large and pretty fields. The Big Wood River and the Little Wood River converged on our farm to form the Malad River. Idaho Power was advertising for buying hydropower. They had a slogan, "Bring us your dreams." So we decided to build a hydroelectric power plant to harness that resource. The excess water from the Little Wood River was diverted over into the Big Wood River. The power plant was called Koyle Hydro and went online April 1st, 1984. It was a very interesting project for Margaret and I. In 1984, Dennis and Shanna's family came to help on the farm. In 1986, Dennis got financing and rented the farm until 1989, when he began purchasing the farm. Margaret and I were called to serve in the Boise Temple after it was dedicated. That was one of the greatest blessings and joys of our lives. Every time we went, it was a spiritual experience. In all, I worked over 14 years in the temple, and I was saddened when I had to quit. With Dennis's family running the farm, I always had plenty of projects to do at the power plant. I could usually find a willing grandson to help out with some of those projects. I was not a good reader, and in the year 2000 we were challenged to read the Book of Mormon. I read it cover to cover twice. That greatly enlarged and expanded my testimony of the Book of Mormon, the gospel of Jesus Christ and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I served many positions in the church. I worked with the youth. I also served in the bishopric with DeLa Stoker and Jim Nowland when we were in the View Ward and living in Willow Creek. That was definitely a highlight of my life. It could be said that I was a pioneer in many ways. I was one of the first to install an automatic yard light that came on when it got dark and turned off when it got light. When I moved to Gooding, I was one of the first to install a center pivot irrigation system. As I prepared to build the power plant, Idaho Power wouldn't commit to buying the power at a reasonable amount, so I sued Idaho Power to force them to contract to buy my power from the power plant. Many other power plants came online as a result of my lawsuit with Idaho Power. The power plant was computer operated at a time when there weren't so many computers in use. I was able to manage the operation of that power plant for many years, even though it might be said that I wasn't trained to do so.
The highlight of my life is being able to be part of our grandkids' lives. We try to make it to every baptism and blessing we could possibly get to. It keeps the roads hot trying to keep up with everyone, and it's been so nice to have them close by too. Each one has been a blessing, and we have loved them dearly. Gladys and her husband were married in September of 1965 and have made a beautiful life in Ashton, Idaho. Gayla married Silas in September of 1968. She and her husband Silas have built a life just a mile down the road from us. It has been so fun to watch them raise their family. Denny and Shanna were married in 1974. They have a beautiful large family, and it has been so fun to watch their kids grow up. Garth and his family also stayed close. It's been so fun to see all those cousins interact. Larry and his family have been in California since they were done with school. We have loved having them come on the summers to visit us. That's been a priceless time to have them here. Alan and Nadine have been married since December of 1978. They lived in Bountiful, Utah, and have recently returned to Gooding. When Marlene returned from her mission in Boston, Massachusetts in 1981, she met her sweetheart Larry. They lived in Gooding and Glens Ferry throughout the years and have also raised a beautiful family. Russell and Tanya were married in January of 1983. They lived in Boise for a long time. When we were workers in the Boise Temple, it was fun to see them on a more regular basis. Their girls are just darling. Roger and Janet have been married since 1984. They lived in Boise and later moved to Utah closer to Janet's family. We were able to spend time with them some when we lived in Boise. They have a really sweet family. On December 20th, 1966, we had a sweet baby girl. And when she was born, her lungs did not inflate. Doctors didn't know how to help her at that time. I stood there for 12 hours watching her. She was a beautiful baby, and the doctor even said she was the most beautiful baby he had ever delivered. We gave her the name of Sherry Koyle. She was laid to rest 6 days later in the Pleasant View Cemetery, east of Burley. We miss our sweet little girl dearly. After my kids were all married, I spent my days looking after my sweet friend Alma Stetznegger from town and enjoying visits from my grandkids, attending their special events, and serving in the temple. At Christmas time, I enjoyed baking goodies for all my grandchildren. Sometimes I even had some little helpers. It brought me so much joy to see the smiling faces as I was able to pass out the goodies.
I'm very proud of my family. I'm proud of the interest they have in the gospel of Jesus Christ and the way they are raising and teaching their families. I have a strong testimony of the gospel, and I pray that my posterity will always stay faithful to the things they have been taught. In the late 1990s, I injured my ankle, making it difficult to walk and work. I started to gain weight, became diabetic, was diagnosed with leukemia, and after spending 14 years in and out of hospitals and nursing homes, I passed to the other side August 6, 2010. I was laid to rest in the Pleasant View Cemetery in Burley, Idaho.
In the fall of 2011, I became ill. It was hard to swallow, and in January of 2012, doctors discovered that I had thyroid cancer, and in just 2 short weeks, I was able to say goodbye to all of my loved ones and graduated to the next life.